What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is Anthony from Blunt Force Discussion. I'm sure you've seen Truth Will Set You Free, Be the Change, etc. But this is the cool opportunity that I have to interview some amazing people. We do them in studio a lot, but when we have the opportunity to get some really fun guests, big names, or like we, like to call them BFDs, big effing frigate, whatever deals. We find a way to make it work. We had Officer Tatum last week. We've had Conservative Ants, and this week is no different. Great guest, and please continue to follow us on all the different channels, whether it be YouTube, etc., and support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Blunt Force Discussion. But let's get into it. We've only got so much time, and we've got a really, really great guest. We've got a New York Times best-selling author, fitness instructor for over 40 years, program developer for Zumba. She's been training instructors on that, and she's also appeared on VH1, MTV, CMT, Discovery, C-SPAN, yada, yada, yada. And also the wife of Mr. Ted Nugent, and they've done a lot of work together. Spirit of the Wild Outdoor Channel, and you'll see that she actually is an expert in mold poisoning, which I have some direct ties to. So we are going to have a great conversation. Strong Christian, strong patriot. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing to the show, Shemane Nugent.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Shemane, thank you for being here. I know I'm going to be honest with you. My roommates in college, huge fans of the Nuge. I liked rock and roll, but it wasn't my thing. And once I've started following you, you actually are more into health and wellness. So I follow you a little bit more than Ted, but I will tell you, my college roommates, they were like Andrew WK and the Nuge. That was their thing. That was what we listened. That's what they listened to in college. So thank you for being here, Shemane.
Well, thanks for having me. But I was like you growing up. I never listened to rock and roll music. I was a disco queen growing up. So, not queen of the forest as I'm known now, but yeah. So it's interesting. Like I'm the last person in the world who you would predict that would be married to a rock star. Like that's.
And you guys, so I do want to get into that really quick because I am curious. And by the way, for you, I know you guys are big hunters. I wore the BFD camo hat. I usually do the brown because, I know how you guys roll. You guys met in 1989. How did that all go? How did you guys meet and like end up being a match for each other? Because he's a pretty crazy dude.
I know. Well, actually, we met October 3rd, 1988.
Oh.
So I was working at a rock and roll radio station in Detroit. I was the traffic reporter. I worked right alongside with Mitch Albom, who's a famous author. Mitch was doing sports reporting at the time. I was the traffic reporter. And every half hour, I'd come into the studio and do a traffic report. Well, Ted came in and filled in for the morning crew for a whole week. So when you're in radio, your job's to talk to people and they want you to banter and to talk back and forth and ask questions and things like that. And I didn't know anything about Ted, which probably worked in his favor, but he was so witty and funny and charismatic and he didn't drink and smoke. And I'm like, this is not adding up. I've got to go to the rock and roll industry to find somebody who doesn't drink and smoke. And you know what? We clicked.
Yeah.
And, but when he first asked me out, I said no, which probably was a trigger for him. Like, she's probably the only one that's ever said no to me.
Right.
So yeah, our first date was November 7, 1988. And then we got engaged a month later at our radio station office Christmas party. And then we got married a month after that in January of 1989.
That is lightning fast. That's within a year. That is awesome. Okay. I had to ask the question. I would be doing my roommates that I probably never, speak to anymore. I went to art school. So you could imagine what side of the political coin a lot of them are on. I don't get talked to a lot anymore, but I'm sure they'd be pretty excited that I'm talking to you. But I like that you guys have managed to find a way to develop separate brands that are that work together, and you guys do the hunting shows and you've done things together, but at the same time you've built this awesome brand over what is a very difficult part of your life. And I honestly wouldn't know much about it except for the fact my mom went through it as well in the house that we had. And it is very underlying. And this is why I'm deeming this a blunt force discussion, is people don't realize one of the biggest issues in this country is actually mold toxicity and what is in our walls and what is in our homes. We wonder about the foods we put into ourselves and how sick we get, etc., based a lot of different things, and a lot of it can be traced back to mold toxicity. So if you could, can you take us through just the beginning of your journey to, because did you start building your brand kind of off of your rebound of the mold toxicity past all the Zumba and fitness instructor stuff?
It's weird to me to be considered building a brand because it's just my life. I didn't do any of this intentionally. I didn't seek out to become the mold lady or anything. But I feel called to, because I got sick and almost died from toxic mold that was growing between the walls of our home that was once featured on MTV Cribs. I never saw anything. We never saw anything. We just kept getting sicker and sicker. I had debilitating migraines. I was once named Detroit's most physical female. I was an athlete growing up. I was a state champion swimmer 2 times, once named Detroit's most physical female, used to race motocross. So I had all these things going for me. And then when we built this house, this new house that was again featured on MTV Cribs, we started getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And the determining factor was when Ted was on tour, and I travel with him, we'd feel better when we were away. And even in places like London, that's supposed to be a rainy, wet, damp place, we'd come home and I'm telling you, Anthony, I never slept. I just kept getting sicker and sicker. You know how you lay there and, you know, I went to dozens of different doctors and they said, well, you're probably just stressed, which is true. And
Yeah.
women, I think especially, we make excuses for ourselves. Well, I had a young son. My husband was on the road. We did have some difficulty in our marriage, and I wrote about it in my books before. I wrote a book called Married to a Rock Star and 4 minutes a day, rock and roll your way to happy. So I wrote about all these things. But the truth is, emotional difficulties, and I just wrote about this in my new book that's coming out at the end of this year called Killer House. Emotional difficulties can set you up for physical maladies. So what I believe is that the house had mold contamination in between the walls. We never saw anything, but I was getting primed to get sicker because of these different emotional stresses in my life.
Yeah, it makes sense because it stacks on top of each other. And also one thing that's important, like Ted mentioned, and we're gonna play I'll play the Killer House documentary trailer. He mentioned the fact that he felt tired and he felt sick, and there is different degrees. Certain people, like my mom, has a weaker liver and doesn't process as well. Like I remember when I would go to her condo, I would take naps all the time.
Hmm.
I never was debilitated. She became debilitated. So it does affect people in a very, very different way. When it came to the mold, what were the different kinds of mold that you guys ended up finding in the walls?
Pretty much everything, but Stachybotrys was the big one.
Hmm.
And for people who don't know, my book that's coming out is basically a mold 101. We could get very detailed about the different types of mold: penicillium, aspergillus, cladosporium. That doesn't mean anything to a lot of people who have no idea that mold can kill you. It can kill your pets. It could set you up for a lifetime of health issues. And that's the most important thing. But yeah, Stachybotrys, that's the one that you want to stay away from. And that's what we had.
Is that so? There's multiple people always say, is it black mold? There's a lot of rain. It's not just black mold. That's a very common misunderstanding. I think my mom's the bulk was aspergillus. I'll actually show you a picture of what the ceiling looked like and how they treated it, which was another just major issue. But what is black mold?
So black mold, it can be anything. You've probably seen mold in your shower and mold around the faucets and it turns black.
Right.
So it could be that if you don't treat it, that turns into a killer mold, Stachybotrys, but it could be a more common mold. I mean, look, there's 1,000 different types of mold. You walk outside and you're confronted with mold like every day.
Mm-hmm.
People have come to determine that black mold is the deadly mold, but really it's like you talked about, it's certain types of mold that could even be green. It
Yeah.
could be white. So you don't know until you actually test it, and then you got to test it properly, and that's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's, you know what? We're going to have that right now. So I'm going to
Okay.
show you, the pictures of my mom's house because
Okay.
this is crazy. Um, I, I come home. I was house sitting for, I actually own the house and I own the condo. It was in an older building. The woman's, and my mom had been wondering why she hadn't been feeling very well, but the woman who had the condo above her toilet overflowed, which caused hyperactivity in the ceiling of the mold growth. There's no way this can grow in a week and a half, 2 weeks, unless it's already very, very bad. It turns out we found out there was lawsuits against the HOA years before. The whole building they've never done a proper remediation. So this is what I found. And my mom still can't look at these photos because it gives her like, but I come in the bathroom. This is what I see.
Mm.
I get up close and that it
Mm.
was dangling mushrooms in a matter of a week and a
Oh
half.
my gosh.
Yeah, I'll show that again.
I just like, I got goosebumps. I can't look at that. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I can't. It
it's
just,
no, that's it. And
I'm having PTSD about that. And I don't mean to make light of it, but I've had people, friends of mine, I've talked about, maybe you should get your house tested for mold because, this person had illnesses. Her daughter had illnesses. And she goes, well, I know that we have mold in our house. I have seen mushrooms growing from the carpeting. And I'm like, dude, you got to get it tested. But now Anthony, here's the sad part. Fast forward a couple years later, this woman's daughter at 14 had bone cancer. Now, can you say that it's from the mold? No. But my guess is probably you
yeah,
want to get this taken care of. So, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. And I'm so glad that we got in touch with each
yeah,
other. You reached out to me
yeah,
through Diana. And I'm so glad because my goal in life is, why are we here? What, in general, what is life's biggest question? If I would have said, what do you want me to do in life, God? It's not like I ticked off the box, be an expert on mold. That's not what I wanted to do. But God has put me in this position. So I'm happy to help people, help educate people, enlighten people for whatever, in any way that I can.
right. And the cool part is though, um, take everything that goes on in our world with pharmaceuticals and the poison we put on our bodies, and then you combine it with the fact that there is a hyperactivity of mold, and you could have this conversation, but the vaccines we've given our kids at this point, and now we've weakened ourselves to the point where we can't funnel out that mold poisoning. So that's why it's become even worse. So no, you can't blame the mold necessarily on the 14-year-old, but you stack all the different horrific things we do to our body at this point, and it's weakened for that a possible way for cancers to get in by way of mold or by whatever it is. It's just something to look at. And this is, and part of it is education. And this is what I'm gonna tell you is interesting, like how you deal with the mold. And I'd love, because I know you've got, the concept on remediation. This is what they did. My mom is a naturopath chiropractor. So she knew how severe this could be. And she was out of town. She was taking care of my sick grandfather. She goes, make sure they get a proper remediation company. They sent the Mexican building worker, who I think should have a lawsuit against them, to clean it up. He took out the ceiling with no proper masking. And by the way, also didn't close the room off. We checked the particulates afterwards. So yeah, it was painted over. And a lot of people do this. And this is why it's important to say, you can't just paint over mold. You have to do a full, very expensive remediation. And there's companies that will do stuff like that at a decent cost. Cut it out, paint it over it. We did the particulates. The particulate during allergy season in Texas, we were 3 times higher in the house than we were outside, 40,000 per square, whatever it is. Insane.
Yeah.
So what do
That's
you
what happened
suggest?
to us too when we tested our house that was on MTV Cribs. The goal is when you test, you do a proper tester will test the outdoors and test every room on the inside, do swab tests, do bulk sampling, do air tests, do dust tests, all kinds of different tests. But the goal is that the air in the outside has a higher concentration of mold than the inside. And that's how you can have some type of a
Baseline.
baseline. So yeah, gosh, I'm so sorry. But you know what? I'm in touch. I have a group of women that we text each other often, and we're trying to put together like an online magazine to talk about all of, their problems and our problems moving forward. And a couple of them have written blogs for my new book coming up. Many of them are military families, and this is what happens too often in military housing. They paint over the problem. It's still there. People get sick. And one of my friends was pregnant, 8 months pregnant, and she lost the baby. And they found out that not only did she have mold in her bloodstream, so did her baby. So it's heartbreaking. And if, thank you again for reaching out to me and pushing this through and being diligent, because I'm all over the board with Ted on tour, but
oh, you're good.
people need to know about this. It's such a prevalent problem. And you're right. There's been mold in vaccines. Pfizer has had mold in their equipment facilities. There have been in Tampa, if you look this up, there were children who were getting treatment at a hospital in Tampa for cancer.
I like Tampa.
They ended up dying from toxic mold in the hospital. And so there's so many different problems. And here's a perfect example. During the lockdowns, pandemic, people are forced to stay home. The incidence of suicide is on the rise. Depression, people are taking more and more medication. Why? I can't say for sure, but maybe they're exposed to mold because they're being forced to be locked down more.
But Shemane, what if somebody has a brand new house? How could this possibly be? And I've got my opinion if you don't, but they're like, how can I have mold in my house? It's brand new. And how do I deal with it? And I'm with you on the same path that like people have been home more, causing brain issues. We're seeing cancer rates off the charts. We're seeing cancer coming back, but how can a new home also have mold?
I will give you the perfect example. And this is coming out. We are actually in a lawsuit with our builder for the home that I'm in, which is 2 years old. Going into building this home, we told our builder, look, we got sick and almost died from our home that 18 years ago that was on MTV Cribs. Build us a home that doesn't leak. Promised us he would. We oversaw everything. But the problem is, you see a guy there pounding a nail. I take it for granted he knows what he's doing. We were on site every day. We monitored what was going on. And yet, get this, there were 4 water leaks before we even moved in. And then the builder refused to fix it. So I'm not just divulging anything. We didn't want to sue him, but it came out. In fact, the local TV station contacted me, and because they've got a person that basically is camped out at the courthouse.
Yeah.
And they contacted me and they said, do you want to make a statement about this? Because we're running it. Since we do, my husband is a celebrity, that is, that will get, it's a newsworthy item. We didn't want to sue anybody, but in order for us to live in this house that we spent a ridiculous amount of money on, we have to fix it.
Yeah.
We had to, in addition to paying for this house, we had to pay to get it done, fixed properly.
Crazy.
So it's such a shame that the building industry, you spend a couple hours. If you become a builder, here's the thing. In the state of Texas, you don't have to go through any special training to be a contractor.
Right.
And as a builder, you could just take a couple hour seminar on mold and think you know everything, and you don't. And then you get subcontractors who don't know what they're doing, and they ruin your home, and you get sick and almost die.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
And you're a person that, you watched it closely. And so that's a great example where there's little issues that happen. So this is what people forget. In these neighborhoods of $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 homes that are just being put up, you are very watchful. These are being thrown up where if there's a rainstorm and there's exposed wood, it's just sitting out there. Most people do not cover. So the same way we talked about paint just covers things up, the same thing can happen when you just are putting up a new house. The mold is already in a lot of the wood, and it's hard to look at. So kind of my last chain of questions on this is, one, What did you do to get your, well, I think that's a longer conversation. Let's go back to that. We'll come back to that one. That'll be what we do after our first little commercial break. What would you suggest from a remediation perspective? What do you call, what kind of company do you look for? Who do you get to check?
Well, fortunately, nowadays there are very well qualified mold remediators. All you have to do is look on Yelp and get, I think, advice from a friend, a trusted person in your life who has gone through a similar situation. That means a lot as well. But do your research. I mean, we did our research on this builder. We had a friend recommend them. We went and saw 10 different homes, and it still happened to us. So the point is, when this happened to us the first time at our MTV Cribs house, it was 18 years ago, mold was not being discussed.
Not at
There
all.
was the one case, Melinda Ballard in Texas got a $32 million judgment. She got $32 million, but then the insurance company came back and knocked it down to $4 million. What I want to ask you, Anthony, is what's your life worth? Think about all the people in your life. Think about if you died right now, how many people would be affected? How many people are you said you pay for your mom's home. How many people rely on you and what you do and the information that you put out? So $32 million to me, when I first heard about that judgment, I was like, hallelujah, good. Because she ended up dying. Her husband died also. I'm not sure if their son died as well, but this is a serious problem, and I'm unfortunately grateful that I can shed light on this, and I've survived and thrived, and I think that's the most important part. There is hope. So, about getting back to remediation, it depends also which state you're in. There's different protocol for every state. For example, in Texas, whoever tests cannot also do the remediation.
Right.
And I'm actually working with some people to try to change the legislation to make it difficult for builders to get away with this, and for more people to become aware of a builder who had faulty building, or for example, military housing where they just paint over it. We need to know about this. If you're buying a house, you need to be aware of this. So that's really, really important.
Makes sense. Yeah. Real quick question, because you keep saying Detroit and you're actually very similar. You're 2 or 3 years younger than, 2 or 3 years younger than my mom. Where in Detroit did you go to high school?
So I started out at Lance Cruz in Harrison Township, but then I moved. My last 2 years were Utica Eisenhower.
Okay. My mom was Southfield High. While we're getting her back, we can do a quick ad break. We do have bluntforce.mymonate.com. So if you've seen, we talk about these products all the time. They come in a lot of cool packaging, stuff like that. I've learned more and more about the products. Bluntforce.mymonate.com. Great products. They have something for every kind of hair type. I've started learning more and more about the different kinds of hair types because it is pretty cool. They're a very patriot-focused business. Shemane, I see you back there. I'll bring you back up in a sec. Supporting their environment while they have all these different products. They also have no toxic ingredients, cruelty-free, vegan, doesn't contain parabens, SLS, SLES, all the bad stuff. And they also are, yes, I know, a network marketing company, but they have also helped people really, truly change their life. If you are interested in learning more about that, hit me up with an email, bluntforcediscussion@gmail.com. Again, that's bluntforce.mymonate.com if you want to just purchase the products or get signed up if you're looking for a side gig, etc. It is really, really good stuff. Honestly, this is all I use on my hair right now, and we will be right back. You're back.
I'm back.
Did Ted kick you off again? All the signals?
Yeah, I think so. Let's blame it on Ted.
What a jerk. What a jerk. It's the great part. So did you hear what I said? So she went to Southfield High.
Southfield. Okay. Yeah. That wasn't too far from me, but yeah.
Yeah, that's much. Yeah. So that was the ad break. All right. So now we're officially back. So let's see. What do I want to do? Let's go ahead and I'm going to play the real quick clip of the documentary, and then we're going to talk about how you truly started to feel better and get healthy.
Okay.
Here we go.
Well, almost 15 years ago, Shemane Nugent and her husband Ted were living the good life, enjoying each other in this home featured on the very popular show MTV Cribs.
Well, what have we here? Greetings. Welcome to the real America. My name's Ted Nugent.
We built our dream home, and it was a place that was supposed to be a sanctuary.
We would tour Europe and feel great. We would tour across America, feel great. We would come home, and after a few days of being home, we'd start to feel rotten.
And I kept getting sicker and sicker.
And I remember one time we were in Florida, and it was just me and her, and I was like waiting for her to come tuck me in for bed, and like she never came, and I guess I just got up and I was like looking for her, and she was in the bathroom and on the floor, and she couldn't move, and she was just crying. And I asked her, I was like, what's wrong? Why aren't you getting up? And she didn't make speech. She just cried and kind of moaned, and it was really scary. And I called 911, and ambulance came. And
I hated to equate it to being in our dream home, but at some point I decided, both Shemane and I decided, that it's the house.
The house was grossly unsafe. A house that they had ended up having to be knocked down.
There are so many different illnesses that can mimic the mold response, the chronic inflammatory response syndrome in the body. And still today, there's a lot of discrepancy. There's a lot of different theories on how you should treat this. So that's my mission in life, is to try to cure myself, my family, and others, and expose the dirty little secret about toxic mold.
All right.
That's even still tough to watch.
Yeah.
Like, even though I know what happened, I know the outcome of it. In the documentary, the part that was tough for me, and if you want to find out more, you can go to killerhouse.org and rent it and watch it. And we were at a film festival. We debuted it at a film festival, and I produced it. I know what happened, but I just started when I saw the part where they were. The contractor was taking, not the contractor, but we had somebody come in and tear the house down, put the claw of that machinery, I can't remember what it's called, but pulling part of our house down. I mean, I know the outcome. It still breaks my heart to this day. We had to walk away from it with just the clothes on our backs, no belongings. And then we got rid of the clothes that we had, because one mold spore is 1/100th the size of human hair, and its natural defense mechanism is to propagate 1,000,000 times. So you can't get away from it. And even when you think you do, like here I am years later, I could get re-exposed to it, or now we suffer from multiple chemical sensitivity. So it's still an ongoing process, but there is hope. And recognizing that there is a problem is the number one step.
Yeah. So that gets me to the next question. And I know my mom did hyperbaric treatments, and she's still, the hypersensitivity is the issue because it can get thrown right back. And you just turned 60. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
You look fantastic.
Thank
see
you.
what you do on your Instagram, and you flip around, and you've got the, livelihood of a 40-year-old. So obviously, although you've dealt with these health issues, you found a way to kind of get a rebound. So when people start coming back from it, what did the treatment look like, and where are you? What would you suggest people do today?
Well, way back, this is 18 years ago, I went to the Environmental Health Center in Dallas. I had a choice. We found out that we had 4 different types of mold in our bloodstream, and Ted and I, and our son had severe asthma. So I could go to the Mayo Clinic and try to get a bunch of tests and be given drugs that would just cover the problem. Problem's still there.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally had to detoxify my body, and the Environmental Health Center in Dallas did that. I had treatments like infrared sauna, which I have one in my house today. I use it almost every day.
Like a red light bed?
Well, it's got a red light in it, but it's an infrared sauna. Infrared is the key because it's the only one that can break through that cell and break up the toxins. So it's not just sweating out, it's repairing, breaking through, breaking down that toxin in the cells. And so you can get it out of your system. So I did that. I did vitamin IVs. In fact, yesterday on my Instagram, I posted myself getting a vitamin IV. I still do it to this day.
Yeah, I saw that.
Several times a year. I changed my diet. I juice. I'm not going to say every day, a few times a week. I try to avoid chemicals in my food. And I say try. At this point, I think life is meant to be worth living. And like, for example, on my birthday, I had chocolate cake.
Oh,
and
my Lanta.
I didn't ask if it was from a box or not. So, it probably was. It probably wasn't healthy at all. But life is meant to be worth living. Now, however, 80% at least, or 90% of what I do and what I eat is really healthy and really clean.
Mhm.
I stay away from MSG, chemicals, preservatives. The closer we get with our food source to the hoof, the ground, or the tree, the better. The more you process foods, the more chemicals are in it, the harder it is to get healthy. You'll gain weight from that, and it will cause things like inflammation in your body, which we know actually these days is the number one cause of so many other diseases.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting. I'm going to ask the question. I'm assuming if you're, I know this is not my medical, I should not be allowed to ask. Are you anti-vaccine, the current vaccine?
Well, this is what I say. I am fully vaccinated. I didn't have an experimental jab.
Got it. I'll take that. All right. What was it? Aaron Rodgers. Gotcha. All right. Based on whenever the Biden administration wants to change the terminology of vaccination. Yeah. Whatever.
I can change it. Yeah. I am fully, when I was a kid, I got everything I needed to get. Yeah. I haven't had any experimental shots lately. No.
There you go. Got it. Okay, good. I think it's interesting because, again, we talk about the inflammation and what some of these things cause and the issues that can take place. And it does all relate to one major thing. And treatment, we have to flush it. And we're going to do a before we wrap up, it's called the shot seat. And it's sponsored. I call it the don't get a shot seat is essentially what it is. But do you know who Dr. Ardis is?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Ardis was one of our first guests on this show, and he has a whole line of products, but he's gone through a lot with me in terms of getting rid of, if people want to detoxify, say they took something experimental, and you talked about your vitamin C infusion, and I saw that video. The glutathione and vitamin C infusion at the highest allowed is essentially what Dr. Ardis has suggested to people if you are symptomatic from the experimental thing. And then on an asymptomatic area, you are just trying to do everything you can to get glutathione produced in the liver to start flushing it out. Very much, in line with snake venom, but that's a whole rabbit hole.
I'm with you on that. Yes.
Yeah.
I get that. And, another couple of other things that I did was lymphatic drainage. I did that. There's a methodology to that, and there's a specific tool. There's something called Firefly, which I have done that works on frequency and vibration, and also EWAT, exercise with oxygen therapy, where you literally put an oxygen mask on and you're on a Stairmaster. And when you're breathing, it's forcing in pure oxygen into your body. So I did that. And then another cool gizmo is called the HOCAT, HOCATT, hyperbaric oxygenated carbonic acid transdermal therapy, I believe. And that too works on vibration, infrared sauna, ozone, and it looks like you're in a spaceship. You keep your head above, and it kills all the bad stuff in your body.
I like it. All right, so let's really quick, because we're down to the last few minutes of the show. I want to do shot seat, and I have one controversial question that I want to ask, because I if there's a chance, I want to get you back on and talk a little bit more about your Christian faith and all that stuff and hunting. But we're going to do quick shot seat. This is where I put you on the hot. Well, it is the, like I said, don't get the shot seat. So here it is. Okay. Let's get started. All right, the Don't Get the Shot seat is brought to you by the Dr. Ardis Show. Go to drardisshow.com. They've got their Ardis Labs products. A lot of the things that I've talked about, whether it's zinc, vitamin C, quercetin, wormwood, they don't have wormwood, but they've got a lot of different things on there that can help you flush and also stay healthy, protect yourself against against COVID or anything that comes up in life, mold toxicity, a lot of things you can flush out of your body. So check and use the code BFD and check out. You get 10% off. That helps us out as well as you. It does. It's a mutual beneficial thing. So here's the questions. As quick as you can answer them. Don't think too much. It's shot seat time. What is your favorite Ted Nugent song?
Queen of the Forest.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that. I'm if I'm gonna like you because I'm more mainstream if I like the Nugent stuff, so it's Stranglehold for me, just because I think that's just
I do like that too. That's I have a podcast. I use that for my podcast, my intro.
Yeah.
I
figured you were gonna say
that's
that.
why I hesitated. There are so many.
Yeah. That's the one, like, you hate to be the one that's probably like what everybody says is their favorite, but teach their own. I like that one the most. Biggest issue facing America right now.
Spiritual warfare.
Spiritual warfare. That's a good answer. I like that. Because I think that's all encompassing. All right, here we go. How can you actually, as a Zumba instructor, how is it that you can make Zumba look cool and not just for old people?
Well, are you saying that I'm old? Is that
no? You've been doing it. You've been doing it for so long because the instructor is always very young.
You know what? I got to tell you, I just feel so blessed that I am healed, not fully healed, but I have been on this health and fitness journey. I love to exercise. I love to dance. I love to share my passion for healthy living with others. And while I'm doing it, I'm getting an awesome workout. So it's such a win-win situation. Thank you for the compliment. I'll take that. I love it. It's all I can say. I love to do it.
I just love passing by the Zumba rooms, and it's like you've got the young instructor, maybe like one like normal age guy, and then there's all older people, and they're killing it. But I'm like, I just can't go. I can't go and do it. All right, last two questions. Favorite way to hunt? Because I know you like to hunt. I think I've seen you with bow and arrow, and obviously rifles. What's your favorite way to hunt, and what is your favorite animal to hunt?
It has to be bow and arrow. I've hunted with a crossbow, not too much with a rifle, but a bow and arrow. I kind of learned backwards. I learned archery, and my favorite hunt was in Africa. I have a 35-pound girly bow. It's a pink bow, and I was able to harvest a zebra with one arrow. Went 25 yards, and I think all the professional hunters there were like shocked. That's awesome. Here I was, a little girl with a girly bow, and I could harvest a zebra, and it fed the tribe there. So awesome. I just feel so blessed to be able to do that.
And that's a big thing. People like, there's a reason it's called conservation, whatever. It's a big reason. There is hunters that literally understand the purpose of making sure that certain populations are not overgrown. There's nothing anti-animal about hunting, and people need to actually understand that. Right. I just became a hunter. I started dating a girl from the country, so I learned, and I finally killed my first deer this year.
Did you?
I had so much, and I've been eating food off of it forever. Whatever. Yes. Last question of Shot Seat. Can Ted sometimes be too much?
Yes.
This was the Don't Take Your Shot Seat. You would have been lying if you answered that any other way. All right.
I know, right?
we're right at the end of your time. So I'm going to do really quick question, and then I'll have you plug yourself, plug all the different cool stuff that you've got going on, the books, the documentaries, and we'll get you on again. Question I have for you is because of your faith, and I know this is a big issue right now, pro-choice, pro-life, and I struggle with this daily. I had a show where I brought on pro-choice and pro-life, and having the conversation from a civil perspective. As a Christian, I struggle with the full-blown pro-life concept. But what I look at is how crazy the pro-choice leftists have become in their verbiage and the way they say things. So what do you think about the phrase, men shouldn't be making laws about women's bodies? Because most of my hardest pro-lifers are females, funny enough. So what would you say to that statement?
Well, here's the determining factor. If a pregnant woman is in a car accident and she dies, there are two lives and the baby dies as well. It's considered a double, death. So that's the indication that, you can look at life. Where does life begin? But if, a woman is shot and killed, and her baby is too. It's a double homicide. There are so many indicators there. For me, I don't know how you could be a Christian and be pro-abortion, because you're taking a life, period. End of discussion. It's a life. And I got to tell you, years ago, I wrote about this. I talked about it before. I had acne, this adult onset acne, when I was in my 30s. And so I started taking a drug called Accutane. Number one thing it said is don't get pregnant. I got pregnant. And because there could be a lot of birth defects. And I told Ted, I remember, I said, I'm having this baby. I don't care what happens. God created this life in me. I ended up having a tubal pregnancy, and which is being talked about a lot today. But to me, that it was
say that one more time, Shemane. You cut out just for that. You had a what kind of pregnancy?
It's called a tubal pregnancy, or ectopic pregnancy, which is what's being talked about today. And you don't have a choice. It's a life-threatening situation. It's not like an abortion. It's very similar to a miscarriage, but I could have died from it as well. Right. So nobody took the life. It came, God, it's all God. So that was my determining factor, I think, when, if God created a life in me, I was going to have it. And I believe that there's so many people who want to adopt.
Yeah.
For me, it's a no-brainer, and it's a hard no on abortion.
Yeah. And Emmanuel Acho has his quote unquote uncomfortable conversations. He had all people that had abortions, and they misinformed people, and it drove me nuts. The one woman on there said that she was forced to do an after hours abortion because it was an ectopic pregnancy. And I said, in Texas, I go, that's a lie. You're literally lying to people, and it drives me nuts. And that's why it's pushing me more to the pro-life side. And like you said, once it's a life, it becomes murder to me. But the question becomes, is that 6 weeks? Is it heartbeat? Is it like, I do not understand the pro-abortion argument, but I do get some of the choice stuff on the very early on. And I struggle with it every day as a Christian, as a person, as a man, and also wanting to not infringe on certain rights as being kind of the libertarian. So that's just where I'm at. I loved your explanation. So thank you for saying that. Was there any other question on that one? There was a follow-up. No, I know you got to go. So we're going to get you back on. Where can everybody get the information, what you're working on, the new books? We'll talk next time about how to be happy and healthy all at the same time. I love some of the titles that you have. So where can people find you?
Thank you so much. My website is shemanenugent.rocks, ROCKS, and I've got information on my Wildly Well community, which is a membership community. And every day of the week, we do something different, including on Sundays, we have live Zoom calls. I put out my workouts. I do all types of things, faith-based. It's a faith-based program. We do Bible study. We do everything there. I've got that, and I've got a new book coming out, which is actually the book version of my documentary, and it's going to be called Killer House as well. And that's information to come soon. So that'll be on my website. And then there's also the killerhouse.org. If you want more information on toxic mold, or you want to watch my documentary, you can go there.
I love it. Shemane, thank you so much. I'm going to send you an email after this. I know you got to jump off. I want to thank everybody for joining. Please share this episode. Again, if you have any questions about what we're doing, I still can take these questions on. So bluntforcediscussion@gmail.com. By the way, I wore this. I pick out a t-shirt every day just for the right guest. So just say no to mandates. I'm like, this fits Shemane.
I love it.
If you want to check out our merch, guys, go to awakenotwokestore.com. Use Awake for 15% off. And if you want to support the show, Shemane knows we both shot out of the same podcast studio, and it is not cheap. So go to patreon.com/bluntforcediscussion to support everything that we do. And Shemane, again, thank you so much for being here and being a part of Blunt Force Discussion.
Thank you so much for having me. God bless.
God bless. Take it easy, Shemane. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.